the biggest gift I can give my clients is the gift of belief. People don't leave your company, they leave you. And he said, no, and here are 7 reasons why I will not partner with you.
They would think that you just show up and success happens.
So you will never get into flow if you don't enter struggle.
But how many of us don't do that?
You have to say no to the good so that you can say yes to the great.
Welcome to the S Club. I'm your host, Kary Oberbrunner, where we talk about real life, relationships, and real estate. And I'm here with my guest and brother, Kary Oberbrunner. So Kary, I've got a couple questions for you today, but would you mind sharing first a little bit about how we got here and more about your story?
Fantastic. Well, I grew up in Wisconsin, so big shout out. I'm visiting Wisconsin just for a couple days here. Live in Columbus, Ohio with my family, have a wife and 3 kids. They're all teenagers. The kids are, that is. And, I started out as a minister. So I was a pastor, and parts of that I liked, but I realized pretty early on that I like to move fast, and the speed of the church world was a little slow. So I kept writing books on the side, and then those books turned into I would call them doorways to bigger worlds. And I just realized, I could probably speak, coach, train, and impact more people. So I came up with the brand Igniting Souls, and in 2012 went full-time into that. Along the way, started a publishing company, and most recently started a second company where we protect intellectual property through blockchain technology. So now it's kind of like we publish, protect, and promote intellectual property and help people turn it into 18 streams of income. So that's pretty much the big picture.
So I know more about you, obviously, because I'm your sister.
Right.
But I don't think a lot of people know some of the adversity that you had to overcome, as a child. And one of those being that you had stuttered when you were younger. So how do you go from being a child who doesn't really speak correctly to now sharing the stage internationally?
Yeah, so I think that everybody goes through struggles as a young person. Mine specifically was stuttering, and I think it really originated from a perfection bias, meaning, okay, you're going to talk, it's got to be perfect, and that internal pressure then actually makes it worse. And I know mom and dad were, this was back in the early 80s and late 70s, so they wanted to help, so they would say, think about what you're going to say. And that's, they're trying to be helpful, but the whole point is you're actually thinking too much about what you're trying to say. And so I had to go to speech therapy. Even as a senior in high school, it came back at the school play. I ran off the stage crying and quit the school play. It has come back over the years, but it turned into, even much worse things like self-injury. So as a late teenager, I got into cutting, and that was, again, this perfectionism, self-hatred, self-punishment thing. So yeah, I would say I've gone through a lot, but I actually got a lot of help too. So now I don't want to say I'm fearless, but I tell people I can smell unbelief fast in people. And why? Because I had so much unbelief about myself. So I had several people believe in me, like a guy named Carl Munsmeyer that we know from Milwaukee. And several people believed in me, and it helped me kind of I borrowed their belief. So now I feel that when I'm a publisher, a coach, a professor, the biggest gift I can give my clients is the gift of belief.
Yeah, and I would say that you mentioned that you still have fear. So when I look at you, I don't think that at all. It's one word that I would use to describe you would be fearless. So how do you get up on stage and do things? I mean, I know you just took a trip to France, and you had to go by yourself. How do you do that stuff without shrinking back in fear?
Yeah. The quick story is that I said yes to the Tour de France routes that are some of the hardest cycling routes in the world, and I was supposed to have my buddies go with me because they encouraged me to do this trip with them. They had done it in the past, but then 5 days before we left, one of the main guys planning the trip, his wife, had a hysterectomy, immediate crazy surgery that she had to go through. So everybody dropped. And then I had the choice, do I go or do I cancel? And all my buddies canceled. But I had clients that were going to meet me in France for a author event, so I couldn't cancel. So then, I had to dig deep and say, am I going to go to a country I've never been to and cycle internationally on the hardest mountains all by myself, and not even 5 days before have a place to stay because the hotel fell through? Like, pack your bike in a box. Like, it was crazy. But that's the type of stuff that I want to see that I can do it. I've studied a lot about flow, the optimal state of human performance. There's a guy, a Hungarian gentleman named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote a book called Flow. Stephen Kotler's picked up his research and done a lot more on it. But flow is the optimal state of human performance. It's where people become 500% more productive. It's where you essentially get into a zone where your inner critic shuts down and you tap into essentially new levels of creativity and innovation. And so there's these things called flow triggers. And one of the flow triggers is novelty. In other words, doing something that you've never done before. You mentioned in some past episodes that you might take a different way to a property, or if you order something different. That's actually a good sign of a flow trigger, because most people in their lives, they actually do the same thing every single day. If you look at most people, they're living the same day for 25 years or 50 years or 100 years. Very few things change. And because of that, their brain is on autopilot. And because of that, they don't have to be present. Like, think about it. If an Olympian has to be in the moment, otherwise they'll crash. Otherwise they'll drown. So Olympians are actually one of the few groups of people who always get into flow. And yet most people in the world don't. But I'm choosing to get into flow every time I write a new book. Every time I do something scary, I'm getting into flow. So for me, I've kind of conquered the speaking thing, but I never conquered a TEDx. Because even today, I don't like scripts. So people would ask me, do you want me to do their wedding? And I'd be like, no, because it's a script. And that's where all my stuttering struggles came from, was you got to memorize this. It's got to be perfect. So when my friends told me you should really do a TEDx on one of your companies about easy IP, blockchain technology, like, I knew I should. But then I knew that I would have to memorize a 15-minute script and get it perfect, essentially. If you don't get it perfect, you perform it and they can stop it and edit it, but it wrecks the vibe. So I essentially got a really good TEDx coach who, his name's Caesar, and he got me in to 10 different options, and I picked Oshkosh. I think I picked Oshkosh.
Oshkosh.
I did, yeah. So I picked Oshkosh because then Mom and Dad could see me. It was my home state, and they are really a cool location to do it. But yeah, partway through, I'm like, why am I doing, like, this is what happens every time I write a book. I'm like, what am I doing? You reach this point of, Stephen Pressfield calls it the resistance, capital R. So anytime anyone does something that's hard, creative, innovative, they face the resistance. And the resistance is the force that you cannot see, touch, taste, or feel. That's like self-limiting beliefs or trying to shut you down. And most people never want resistance or they never push through resistance. But the flow cycle, there's 4 stages, and the first stage is struggle. So you will never get into flow if you don't enter struggle. So, yeah, John Giganti, my guy, you know him, who helped me with the TedX. 7 days before the TedX, we showed up at a Cohatch working space, and he just coached me. And my first time I did it, and again, I had been studying every day. I teach at Cedarville University entrepreneurship, so every day to Cedarville, I would study it, and every day home for like 40 days. And then 7 days before, when first time I gave it to John, it was really bad. And you face that, like, what am I doing? They've already announced me. What am I thinking? I'm totally not going to do this. But then you just lean in and you face it. And that's the same thing I did with France. Same thing when I've had crazy stories in my business. You know, back in 2021, I had I have a small company, but like 10 people quit within 4 weeks. And it was a very small company. And you're like, what's going on? You know? So yeah, every day I love entrepreneurship because it's highs and lows and it's unpredictable.
I think though, if a lot of people would look at you, they would think that you just show up and success happens.
Yeah.
And it sounds like from what you shared, you do a lot of preparation in the background.
Oh yeah. Every moment's preparation. Like this morning I was on a exercise bike at the YMCA, crushing it for an hour of straight cardio. Why? Because in 30 days I'm going back to France. And yeah, I want every day to, you know, I'm big into faith. I'm big into health. I'm big into business. You know, I love my family a ton. So like I call it show up filled up. It's just like a glass. If you show up empty, you will repel success. Clients feel it. They feel like you're needy. They feel like you need them. And so what I try to do is show up filled up so that clients are like, wow, this guy's full of energy, full of fire. I want more. And that's actually the best sales. If you show up filled up, you don't need to spend Facebook ads.
So you're looking, I heard you mention, to go back to France. What are you doing on the second trip back to France?
I mean, we're going to do new routes, and this time the guys are supposed to go with me. I think they will. But I knew, kind of like what you said in a previous episode, I knew that I could totally cancel the trip and disappoint my clients because, again, they had booked a trip. I try to do things really intelligently, like go for fun and tie it into business and tie it into content creation. So I call it not repurposing. This is where your incredible studio, Rock Rose Productions, like they're content creators. But what I do is I pre-purpose instead of repurpose. A lot of people think, oh, we shot content. Well, we could repurpose that. That's actually bad thinking because that's saying you're thinking about it after. So what I do is I pre-purpose. So we talked in a previous episode about you used to say you're busy. I never say I'm busy. I say I'm intentional. And if people go to my website, KaryOberbrunner.com/opus, O-P-U-S, they'll see my whole map for my life. And it's not that it's, I'm going to do all these things. It's these are what my yeses are, so that everything that's not on that list is already a no. See, most people live their lives by saying, oh, I'll go to my inbox. Maybe I'll do this. maybe I won't. I show up every day and say, I already know what all my yeses are, so everything else is a no. So I'm not wasting time, any bandwidth thinking, maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. And people think that's restrictive. It's actually freedom. So think about it. Prior to getting married, I'd walk in a room and say, is she the one? Is she the one? Is she the one? Is she the one? That takes a lot of mental energy because you're always wondering, is that a potential? It's the same thing with life. Most people walk into life and say, should I do that opportunity, that one, that one, that one, that one? And they just grind their best energy. Instead, I'm saying, no, I've said no to everything else. So if something actually does get on my calendar, like this podcast with you, it's because it actually fit my opus. And now I'm excited to do it.
So I hear you saying a lot that clarity attracts things for you.
Yeah. I came up with the phrase, clarity attracts, confusion repels. So people want a clear leader. Even if somebody is wrong, according to your match, you respect clarity. Like Chick-fil-A, let's use them as an example, closed on Sundays. They have a lot of haters, but nobody can say they're not clear. So I actually like and respect people who are massively clear, even if they're wrong, because at least you know. I don't appreciate people who are confused because they will not attract people.
I think, though, too, even though Chick-fil-A does that, every time you drive by, they're busy.
Right.
Or we talked about, too, in a prior episode that you know you have to go there then, Monday through Saturday.
Right, because it's scarcity. Yeah. So when I drive to Chicago later today, I already have 4 phone calls because people said, can I meet with you? Can I meet with you? And I said, sure, while I'm driving at this time. And they're already vetted people. Like I saw the other day, somebody posted on Facebook, what do you tell somebody who asks if they can pick your brain? And when you get to a successful level, like a lot of your listeners, like you, people are going to do that. So at first you're flattered and you're like, cool, somebody wants to pick my brain. But you suddenly realize that that's not a good use of your time or their time. Because when people want to pick your brain, usually they don't even know what they want. Usually they just have an awareness that I need to talk to you because I'm going to find out an answer. So when people say, can I pick your brain? I actually send them a video that's already pre-done that says, thank you. So I honor them. I say, thank you for requesting to meet with me. Just like my coach tells me I need to complete an impact filter before I meet with him, I'm asking you to complete an impact filter. Here's a video and the PDF on how to complete it. Then once you complete it, my team will review it and we'll chat about how we can serve you. Guess how many people fill that out?
I was going to ask you. What is
less
the percentage?
Than 10%.
Wow.
So already 90% of people aren't worth meeting with. And it's not because they're not cool people. They're not willing to say, you know what, this guy's time is so valuable that I'm willing to actually make it valuable by understanding what I want. Then the people who make it through, probably half those people, I really can't help them. So half those people write it out and they're like, I want this or I need this or I need that. And half those people I actually say, great, I actually know somebody who can do that for you. One guy said, well, I wanted to meet with you to talk about if I could pitch an investment to you. So I don't do that anyway, you know. So then the half who do make it through, the 5%, I might meet with. Or if I can't meet with them, I have a referral network that I can send them to, and they actually then can get better served by this person. So we have a friend named Nikki, Nikki's a Christian business coach. I just referred someone to her because I don't have the time at this point in my life because I have 2 businesses and I'm a chair of a professor at a university to meet with this lady for coaching. So instead I sent it to her. I might get a commission, I might not, but Nikki, if she meets with her and they become a great fit, she's going to better serve her and I actually feel better.
So once again, though, it sounds like you're providing value. Instead of just saying to somebody, no, I'm not going to work with you.
Yeah, I don't just say, no, I'm too busy. I think that's not cool. I've had people do that where they don't give you a path. They're just like, no, I don't do that. So I don't think that that's helpful.
So your thinking has definitely changed over the past couple of years. Who would you say has influenced your thinking the most?
Well, I like Dan Sullivan a lot because he creates what's called thinking tools. So, I mean, classic story, I had this business idea for a blockchain solution for intellectual property. And I went to Dan and said, hey, Dan, do you think this is something that you could partner with me on? And he shot back a video and he said, no. And here are 7 reasons why I will not partner with you. And Kelly, my wife, heard it through the office door. And she's like, oh my gosh, are you ever going to talk to that guy again? And I'm like, yeah. I said, actually, that was super helpful. Because at first it hurt, you know, because at first he's like your coach and he's telling you, I'm rejecting you and here's 7 reasons why. But then I took those 7 reasons and said, that's exactly the 7 steps I need to achieve to become partnerable. And guess what? You saw it last night. I mean, he's partnered before that, but, you know, I was on his quarterly goals this you know, for our workshop in Chicago tomorrow. And who's on his quarterly goals? Me. And, you know, I just take that as not a pride thing, but as a crud. I had to go through a dark valley and really dig deep. And that was when those 10 people were leaving my company because they said, your idea is crazy. We're leaving. We don't believe in it. Essentially, people don't leave your company. They leave you. So these people quit on me. And rather than me be a victim, this is really important. I'll tell your people this. This is not my own. A victim is someone who lies in bed, blame, excuses, and denial. And they say that the world happens to me. So a lot of people live in victimhood. The world happens to me, blame, excuses, and denial. The opposite is to live like a victor that says, I happen to the world. And that's where you put your oar in the water and move forward. Ownership, accountability, and responsibility. And so I really had to look in the mirror and say, you know, I'm living like a victim. So for all while I was trying to be an entrepreneur and leave the pastorate, I was a victim. Because I said, it's the church's fault, it's my senior pastor's fault, it's God's fault. And really, I think God was waiting on me to dig deep and start serving rather than focused on fear.
So when I hear that story, Dan pretty much did the same thing to you that you now do when you're looking for right fit clients.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I think it's a great 360, and now I have the amazing entrepreneurs like Peter Diamandis, you know, Salim Ismail, Naveen Jain. Naveen's tight with Oprah, Richard Branson. I mean, like, I have the craziest, coolest clients coming to me now. But it gets back to your previous episode. I had to say a no to a lot of okay clients, fits. But I realized I could actually step up the value I gave, but I needed more bandwidth. And it wasn't saying no to unsuccessful people. It was just saying, you know what, I can't compete on pricing. There's a ton of other publishers out there who do a good job, and if they want to be the value economical model, I'm not playing in that space. And what I'm going to do instead is 10x the value that my clients get. And there's nobody else in the world who publishes, protects, and promotes your intellectual property and turns it into 18 streams of income. Nobody else does that in the world. So it's like what we offer, nobody can compete. And that's actually a good place to be. But I had to say no to like large areas of money and business to do this. And that's really what our friend Ben Hardy wrote, 10x is better than 2x. But it talks about Michelangelo and This is the story of everybody. You have to say no to the good so that you can say yes to the great.
But how many of us don't do that, because we're afraid or we think of what we're going to lose?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
So I know we got to move into, what is it, the R factor? No, I love your structure. I watch your podcast now. But it's, in 3 years if we're having this chat?
So I'm going to close with this question. So if we were to be here 3 years from now, what would have to happen in those 3 years, both personally and professionally, for you to feel like you made progress?
Yeah. That's a tough question. I know you and I even structured the whole podcast, but what would need to happen personally and professionally? I think probably more of what we just said, where am I settling for the good? That would be a question 3 years from now. I would want you to look at me in the eye and say, did you settle for the good when you could have had the great? And, my hope would be no. And I know that this is what people think. People think you get to a level of success where you don't have struggle or challenges. It's actually just a bigger struggle. So nobody can opt out of the game. Nobody can just sit on a beach. The game always increases the stakes. And, our friend Chad Willardson just had an NBA professional athlete come to him and say, I know you work with 8-figure and 9-figure entrepreneurs. I want to hire you to be my wealth advisor. And Chad had to dig deep and say, but I don't work with athletes, because it's a whole different game. So he basically said no to a lot of money and opportunity because he did not want to change his core values. And I mean, this is the classic story.
I feel like you only have that, though, when you have extreme amounts of clarity and confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. In one of my books, The Deeper Path, I call it the Deeper Path Payoff, but it's clarity leads to competence, which produces confidence. So you have those first three. Then you get influence, impact, and income. So everybody looks and says, I want income, but they don't look at the clarity, competence, confidence. Then you earn influence. Then you earn impact. Then people pay you money. So you have to go through the 6 steps totally. You don't just get income. So I think now we're going to go offline, and we are going to talk about the encore for the S Club. So I hope you have a good question for the S Club.
I hope so too.
All right. So thanks for watching. And I'm excited, by the way, Sarah, for your podcast, because going on from this episode, you're going to be the sole interviewer with your guests. So you've told me some of the guests you have lined up, and I think you'll attract more amazing guests. So I can't wait to see what happens.
All right. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.